parachute open, pulled my leg over my head even further and to the right. Pain was that hard, bad, I was vomiting. I knew there was a problem. Me and my mate just decided to drop 3 of them on the dance floor. She just slaps the general as if say, how dare you? These guys are guests of the president. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus within the knee, my hamstring, my calf and my quad, so all the supporting muscles.
Dean Stott, thank you very much for joining me.
An absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
To get into the Marines, like once you got in, I mean, that's hard enough. But then once you got in, you kind of had to box your way in, didn't you? You had to fight your way to earn a little bit of respect.
Yeah, well, prior to going on my All Arms Commando course, you do a beat up. It's like a 4-week selection process with the 5'9" Commandos. And I had a bit of a fight back in Germany. I was posted in Germany at the time playing football for the army over there. And I got into a bit of trouble. And I ended up spending time in Her Majesty's prison, Colchester prison.
Oh, shit. Talk me through the fight. Talk me what happened?
Yeah, no, what it was the Royal Engineers run a course called Assault Pioneer course, where infantry come and learn a bit about engineering. And we had some Fusiliers on our camp who had already been banned from going downtown because they were causing too much trouble. One of the squadrons had just come back from Northern Ireland, and they had a big, welcome back party reunion in the camp bar. And obviously the Fusiliers were there, and they were being quite rude to some of the wives and things like that. So yeah, me and my mate just decided to drop 3 of them on the dance floor, and just went to bed, thinking things like that normally get swept under the carpet. But their troop sergeant wasn't happy at all that 3 of his guys had probably gone to hospital. So yeah, I got really woken by the military police, questioned, went off, did my commando course, sort of got told 2 weeks before the end that, yeah, you're probably going to have to go back to Germany and have a court-martial. Court-martial process would have probably taken about 18 months, but for me, I just admitted guilt, get it through, and then, just move on with my life. Thankfully, I was quite early in my career. I'd only been in the army about 18 months. It wasn't in the latter stages.
Yeah.
So, but I learned a lot from that process. A, don't get caught, but B, Colchester prison, for me, I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I learned more about the military I hadn't seen before. We were doing aircraft recognition, we were doing drill, we were doing all the other stuff, But for me, you can't be seen to be benefiting from that. It has to be as a punishment. But then when I left there, I then joined my unit after the commando course, and the admin officer just ripped up the report, threw it in the bin. He said, like, that's your start point now. We'll start all over, which is perfect. So I could put, it wasn't a cloud over my head or in my career. It just moved on. But the unit I just joined, they were the Army Mine Unit boxing champions. And every year, because they won, they'd automatically go to the final. And so the squadron were in Northern Ireland at the time, and when I just passed, and when they came back, you can imagine a few of the big characters, especially in the boxing team, were like, oh, well, you think you're handy, so prove it. So I ended up found myself on the boxing team, which for me, it was a step in the door. I had my fight at the Army finals, my unit finals, and I knocked my opponent down 3 times within a minute and a half, and that was the end of the fight. So for me, I'd sort of made my mark within the squadron, and no one really knew who I was, and for me, yeah, that was it. That was the start point there.
Yeah, that's going to earn you a little bit of respect with the lads, isn't it? Then you decided to go and join the Special Forces. The instructors on course, the DS, they try and they give you lots of opportunity to quit, don't you? And sometimes they even trick you into quitting.
Yeah, that's what it is. Unlike other courses, the course is hard enough as it is. It's called selection for a reason. So they don't need to scream and shout and be in your face like you probably see on the TV or other courses that you've had in the military. Because the course is hard enough as it is. They just tell you what you need to do, where you need to be, and then if you
expect you to do
it, you don't get there. It's a lot about being able to retain information as well. So they'll tell you once, they may tell you twice, but if they tell you a third time, then you're obviously not suited for the role. but yeah, they do that. But when you then go to the jungle, so the first phase is the hills phase, which is more the physical element, running around the mountains, and they don't even know your name then, you're just a number. And then after 4 weeks, that's when selection starts. And they do, you see that they start playing mind games, especially when in the jungle and things like that. They tell you you're not good enough to be on the course, save yourself another 4 months of heartache and blood, sweat and tears when you can just leave now. And that's what it is. It's just trying to see how you react to negativity, how you react as a person. Are you a feisty person? Will you react in an aggressive manner, or will you just take on board that information and ignore it? So everyone's an individual. But when you're in the jungle as well, and it's like 100% humidity, and you're hanging out, and then they're doing it. When you're fatigued, then it's a different reaction than when you're like fully fed, watered. You just brush it off. So they pick their moments and pick their opportunities, and sometimes it sticks. Some guys are like, yeah, I don't think I'm doing well. These other soldiers are great soldiers. I don't belong here. But one of the things the instructors said to us, and I always remember, is let us fail you, don't fail yourself. So until they say you're off, you're still on that.
I know you can't talk about the missions that you did once you're in the Special Forces, that's standard, but there was an incident that ended your Special Forces career. I was wondering if you could talk me through what happened.
Yeah, so I just about on another tour to Afghanistan on pre-deployment training out in Oman. I was doing what's called a HALO jump, a high altitude, high opening jump. So unlike Halo, which is skydiving, and you're not attached to the aircraft, this one it's a static line still attached to the aircraft. So as you exit the aircraft, once the parachute gets taut, it pulls open. So we've done many of these jumps before. My sergeant major said, just go do a fun jump. I was like, no such thing as a fun jump. But, it was my third jump of the day. A normal routine, exit the aircraft. But this time there was something wrong. I looked up. I wasn't looking straight ahead. I was looking up in the sky, and my leg was caught in the line above my head. So I'm trying to kick my leg out in time before the parachute went taut and open. And I couldn't. And parachute opened, pulled my leg over my head even further and to the right. And thankfully, my ankle released and my leg wasn't taken completely off with the force. Straight away, I knew through the pain was that bad. I was vomiting. I knew there was a problem.
So you, at this point, are you dangling in the air?
I have a canopy above my head,
right,
so
okay.
I still have a canopy above my head. I've had a couple of jumps before where you've had no canopy and you've had to cut away, but at least I had a canopy above my head. So that was my first concern. I've now got that. But at 15,000 feet, you travel up to 30 minutes or 50 kilometers to the target area. So I still had to be in the air for another 30 minutes. You don't just come straight to the ground. 15,000 feet, you're on the limits of oxygen as well. So I was also drifting in and out of consciousness. And the rest of the team are off towards the target. So vomiting, and there's no point in getting on the radio telling everyone you've got a sore leg. I just have to follow them, stay with them, and get to the target area. And that's what I did. But I monitored the other parachutists, their approach when they landed, against the winds, and found my best approach. Because if I mistimed the landing, I could potentially damage the good leg. But it was a great landing. It was one-legged
Well done.
landing. Yeah, but unfortunately, the damage sustained on the exit, and as you touched on, ended my career. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus within the knee, my hamstring, my calf, and my quad, so all the supporting muscles as well.
Shit. You just mentioned before that you've jumped out and you haven't had a canopy over your head. Can you talk me through that? Because that is just your worst nightmare, isn't it?
We did one in Norway where we were all sat on the DZ waiting for the flights, and then by the time we'd taken off, I think 50% of the parachutes had frozen, so the lads jumped out and it was just an ice block, so they have to cut away. So there's different scenarios and why you have to cut away, but thankfully it's that's where the training kicks in. You don't think twice. Is that a hole? Is it not a hole? You've rehearsed anyway, and so when it comes to it, you can do what's needed.
Didn't you get captured at one point in Guinea?
we had some Arab ministers who were going to meet the prime minister and the president the next day and go to meetings. We arrived late in the evening, about midnight, got to the hotel. There was only one room between three of us. The private jet was flying in at 8 a.m. So for me, I wasn't really comfortable. I said, well, let's go recce the places that we need to go. So did that in the evening, came back in about 5 o'clock, quick shower, and then back to the airport. But because the Arab ministers were meeting the prime minister and president, next thing is whole entourage turned up, military, police, the lot. And they said, oh no, because they're our guests, we'll take them everywhere. So they did our job for us, which was fine. They flew out that evening. The next day, everywhere I go, I like to do a report on, of the task, what worked, what didn't work, contact details of potential fixes, just so in case anyone after me was going, I can go in blind and say, well, look, this is what we learned and this will help you on yours. So I made that, I did that everywhere I went. And I have my own boxes just full of people all over the world that I can call upon. And so that's what I did. The next day, I thought, well, I'm going to go do my recce. I'm going to get Latin GPS positions of the places, images as well, and things like that. And the president's PA, she offered us one of their vehicles. Good old, just use one of our vehicles, but it had all the flags on it. And obviously, for me, it was like drawing attention. I said, oh, no, we're all right, thank you. We'll go low profile. But one of the buildings I was at, I had my GPS out and, I was then taking notes. But unaware of me, there was a military base across the road and the guards came over. Obviously, you don't look like a local. They came over and were quite aggressive, speaking French. Pulled my GPS out of my hand. There was me and one of my mates and then our local fixer, he just ran, which is good because he had to go get help. He just disappeared. So we're sat in his office and just getting interrogated by these Ghanaian special forces. They were like airborne, they had parachute wings and things like that, and they're just screaming French at us. And I didn't really get too concerned, but I knew they were military guys, and I started to ease the situation, talked about the parachute wings and how we used to jump and things like that. And it wasn't that heated, but about 4 hours later, the door kicks open and it's the president's PA. She just slaps the general as if say, how dare you? These guys are guests of the president.
You look at cycling the Pan American Highway, which is 22,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to do it in under 110 days. Is that right?
The world record was 118 days. I'd set a target of 110 days. Yeah, you're right. So I came back from that Canadian embassy job. My wife had highlighted I'd only been home 21 days in a whole year. So something needed to change. Yeah. So chapter 16 in my book is called Dead or Divorced. That's the stage we're at this point. So my wife was a property developer and said, "Don't need to be taking these risks. Come work with me." So that's what I did. My injured leg now was 2 kilos lighter than my good leg because of the muscle wastage. And so I just bought a push bike off Amazon. Never really cycled since a young boy on a BMX, and cycled to and from the office, but it wasn't big mileage, 8 miles there, 8 miles back, but being physically active again, I sort of lost that identity with my injury. I got to where I had in the military because of my physical robustness. I couldn't even run 100 meters. So to actually be physically active again, doing some CV, it felt good. But you can imagine with my backstory, sat in these architects and planners meetings, I wasn't really interested. So, my wife's like, you need to do something. And about a month before my 40th birthday, I said, well, I fancy doing a world record. And that was it. We just put cycling because it wasn't hurting my knee. And my wife then found, yes, as you touched on, the Pan American Highway, the world's longest road. So 14,000 miles or 22,000 kilometers. So it's equivalent, because of the curvature of the earth, it's equivalent to cycling from London to Sydney and then another 4,000 miles. It's that far. So I thought, oh, perfect. Having never cycled more than 20 miles, applied for the world record. And Guinness came back 6 weeks later, said, yes, you've been successful in the application. The world record at that time was 118 days. And I do a lot of charity work. Prince Harry and I had done a lot of stuff. I met him in the military and we'd done a lot of stuff before in more military charities. And I said, look, I'm going to do this. What charities should we do it for? And he was just about to launch a campaign with his brother and Kate called Heads Together, which was really focusing on mental health. And I'd seen firsthand issues with mental health in the military, but not aware how big it was throughout the whole of society. And so that's what I did. I set a target of raising £1 million for the Heads Together, and I just trained for a year. I wasn't a cyclist, but from my time in the military and my time in the private security, I knew it was all about planning and having a decent plan in place. And as I evolved as a cyclist, I sort of dropped that into the plan. I set off on the 1st of February, 2018, and but I did the opposite from everyone else. When I talk about what worked, what didn't work, if you were going to do it again, what would you do differently? When I was doing the research to this, I spoke to the previous record holders, and they'd started in Alaska, finished in Argentina, but all their issues are in South and Central America. So I was like, why don't we address them early, get them out of the way, and then so that's what I did. One thing I'm proud of, I just turned it on its head. Yeah. Just because it went one way doesn't mean it was the right way. So we set off from Argentina, and it didn't come without issues. There was food poisoning. I crashed my bike. We got horrendous. You can imagine with the weather as well. You got some really strong winds down in Tierra del Fuego, and really, we got to the Atacama Desert in Chile. It was 47 degrees Celsius for a week with no shade. So we
shit.
And that was what the attraction was on this challenge as well. It wasn't. You had the 4 seasons. You had everything from 47 degrees to minus 18 in Alaska. But I took 10 days off the South America world record. I did it in 48 days and flew from Cartagena to Panama City. And I was making good progress. I know a lot of people mess with me like, well, you've got one record, you can relax. But my target was Pan American Highway. For me, that was almost like a Brucey bonus in between, a short-term target. I got to North America on day 70, and I was 14 days ahead, and I was like, perfect. Take a day's rest here or there if we need it. And my wife rang me about 5 times, and she was the campaign director, very good in keeping all the distractions away from me. So my initial thought there was a problem with my children. So I rang them, and she told me that we've been kind of invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding. I was like, okay. So I need to get back in time for this. I need to be finished by day 102, which was 15 days ahead of the world record. So going into the phone call, I was 14 days ahead. 10 minutes later, I'm now a day behind. Everything I've just done and achieved meant nothing. It's like you now have a new goal to get. So I got to Lubbock in Texas the next day, and I had 60-mile-an-hour winds and tornadoes. So I was grounded for another 24 hours. And there's an app on your phone called Windy TV, which gives you the strength and directions of the winds. And I just looked at that all day. You can scroll every hour for the next 2 weeks, and it gives you a very accurate weather window. So for me, I had to cycle 340 miles in the next 36 hours to miss the next weather window. And I just played chess with Mother Nature through North America. I had 17 days planned on paper originally back at the start. I mean, I did it in 11 and a half days.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to Canada, and I was a week outside, and I thought, right, the wedding's secure, the world record's secure, unless they get eaten by a grizzly or a wolf. And then a guy called Michael Strasser, a professional cyclist, he was about 26, 27 years old. He'd sponsored by all the big brands like Red Bull, all the top brands. He'd come out on social media that day and said that he was going to do the Pan American Highway and be the first man in history to do it under 100 days. So for me, I was like, great. So the dynamics had changed again. I wasn't comfortable in just smashing the world record. What I thought, if I didn't give it my all, then I don't think I'd be able to sort of not live with myself. You'd always be questioning, the what ifs. So I just pushed it as hard as I could and cycled for 22 hours in the last 30 hours in minus 18 to come in 99 days, 12 hours and 56 minutes. So it wasn't the original plan. It's just how it evolved through the challenge. So I talk about the importance of planning. Actually, yes, it's good to have a plan, but the actual success of this was being reactive to the situation on the ground when the plan changed. So you need to have flexibility in your plan.
You must have been shattered at the end of it, obviously, but then you've got to come back to the UK and go to the wedding, the royal wedding, and I'm assuming a massive load of media as well that you would have had to have gone and done the rounds with.
Yeah, so I'd lost 12 kilos on the challenge, started at 19, finished at 78. I was just getting used to being around my family. And then we're flying back to UK like 2 days before, and you had 11 TV interviews one day, 11 the next. And for me, I'd wish I had a bit more time to appreciate what I'd done before we started talking about going into the wedding, because it was almost like, how's the wedding? And I was like, I've just smashed two world records and raised over £900,000 in mental health, but everyone just fixated on the wedding.
All the media interviews are all about Harry and Meghan, right?
Yeah, it's like, how was the wedding? I was like, really?
There was a moment that was quite entertaining in your book. There was a moment where you are doing your media rounds, and a security guard puts you on a bench.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I was traveling. It was the day before the wedding, so I was bouncing between CNN, Fox News, Sky News, and they're all over Windsor. So I'd just come from CNN, which was down by the river, and I was heading up to Sky, which is outside Windsor Castle, where their tent was. But you get a media bracelet, so it means you're on one side, and the public were all on the other, because it was a huge gathering. It was like the London Olympics. And I basically got told, you just need to sit down. Someone's coming out. And it was Harry and William coming out to meet the crowds, basically. And so he was doing his bit. But then as they were coming back towards the castle, Harry spotted me and comes running over. And and he obviously he was touching his face, basically telling me how skinny I was. Of course, the media thought I had inside information whether he was going to shave his beard or not. So it was good exposure.
Harry, a good lad though.
Yeah, no, really good. Obviously, he's born into that the society that he's in, but he's, I saw him. I met him in the military, so I met him as a soldier and an officer, and that's all I ever saw him as, and treated him as such. I sort of look beyond the royal titles, and he gets that. If you treat him like one of the guys, then he gets your mutual respect. But yeah, after 14 years of a friendship, still very much in communications. Now both living in California. A lot of parallels.
Yeah, because you mentioned how you just sort of treat him like one of the lads. There was a kind of a nervous introduction for you and him, wasn't there? Didn't you try and give him a bit of stick and?
Yeah, I just started just doing some military banter in front of him. Gave him a bit of stick in front of the group. So and he appreciated that. He felt like he wasn't being treated differently. And so the Sergeant Major, however, was like gobsmacked that I said it. But he then partnered us off for the 6 weeks. He's like, well, you're obviously going to treat him how he should be treated. So that worked.